Hey guys, just wanted to give you a few hints about the very first assignment that is listed here in Module 5. The 511 journal, can I afford that? And I've tried really hard to make it very clear how important it is for you to not skip the learning information within each module. And sometimes, that still happens. What do I mean by that? Here's what some people will do sometimes. So here in this 5.1, affordability is links and information you're supposed to click on and read. But sometimes we don't do that. We just skip the learning content and we go straight to the assignment, 511 journal, can I afford that? So let's say I'm in that boat. I've decided I'm just going to jump straight to the journal. So let's read what's happening here in this assignment. So it says that Joe Bob wants to buy a car and he will need to take out a loan in order to make that purchase. It gives you some information about his income every month. And then it also tells you about 2 debts that he currently has. And just as a special note, you don't need to take taxes into consideration for this. Okay, so then it asks you some questions here in the journal. It says, according to the affordability formulas given, can he afford to take out another loan? And I'm going to talk about this bullet first. Because here's what happens that I see people do incorrectly. They just kind of start stating their own opinion about whether or not he can afford to take out another loan. And they completely disregard according to the affordability formulas. Well, what the heck is an affordability formula? I don't see anything written here. Well, you don't see it because it's in the section above right here in the learning space, affordability. So if we were to click on that link, first of all, it gives us an overview of what affordability is, and it gives us these 3 great articles that link to more information about affordability. And you're going to notice that word debt to income ratio in there. And for those of us who don't know, which you're going to read more in detail about this in the articles, but a basic explanation is when you compare the amount of debt you already have to the income that you have coming in. Obviously, the more debt you're paying on every month, the less easy it is for you to afford to buy other things. So even though, everybody's situation is different, and they tell you that up here in this overview, it says, although the concept of affordability varies from person to person. So again, everybody's situation is different. Okay, but here are some general rules of thumb that financial advisors give. One piece of advice, and again, this is just a general thing. Everybody's situation is different. 25% or less of an individual's gross monthly income should go towards housing. Okay, so I did not follow that rule when I was younger. I frankly bought a house I couldn't afford, and it was definitely more than 25% of my income, which meant, I was really struggling when it came to paying for my other stuff. Another guideline that they give you is in this second bullet where it says 35% or less of an individual's gross monthly income should go towards total monthly debt payments. Then they give you some examples of what that could include, like your car, credit cards, student loans, medical, etc. But here's where the confusion comes in addition to housing. So sometimes people misunderstand what that in addition to means. Okay, so what some people think it means is that, okay, great. So a financial advisor would tell me that I can afford 25% of my income to go towards my house, and then another 35% to go towards my credit cards, whether I have a car payment, stuff like that. That is not what this is saying with that word in addition to. Because notice what it also says is total monthly debt payments. So that means all the debt that you have, including your house. So in other words, let's say that I have 25% of my income going out every single month to my mortgage. That means if they recommend that only 35% should go towards all my debts, that means that I only have, of course, 35 minus 25%. I only have another 10% of my income that it's recommended should be spent on all my other debt combined. So you're not adding that 35 and that 25% together. Wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you because I have seen students be confused by that in the past. So in other words, this learning block gives you all the information that you're going to need to answer that journal question. And sometimes people find that wording a little bit confusing too, because the fact that it says affordability formulas, okay, because you'll notice in the journal it says affordability formulas. Like, use that to decide whether or not he can afford to take out another loan. So people get to the learning block, and because of that word formulas, they're thinking, oh, that means there must be an equation in here somewhere I need to use. No, when we say affordability formulas, all they're saying is that's just, formulas can also be in words. So the affordability formulas are like these guidelines, and then also the guidelines that are provided in those articles as well. So you're not actually looking for like an equation in order to be able to answer those questions. So the other thing I want to point out really quickly is the rubric. And of course, we are always focused right here on this proficient because we all want to get 100%. And I want to make sure I point out the difference between what they mean for application of formula and conclusions. Because if you notice, the third thing is that, communicates clearly. So basically, is your idea communicated in a clear manner? Okay, but the main two things that we're focused on here, the main two sections for this journal, are application of formula and conclusions. So for application of formula, applies the affordability formula to the given scenario. So in other words, to get 100% in that category, you are using the information that we just discussed from the previous learning block, and you're using that information, those percentages, those recommendations, to decide whether or not Joe Bob can afford to buy a car. And you see that kind of supported here, show your work. Okay, so if you're working with percentages and you're working with an income, you got to do some calculations in there. So you're going to get 100% proficient if you use those percentages and actually did some calculations. The second part, the conclusions, articulates conclusions about the application of the formula. So the green, okay, so the part I've highlighted in green, you're doing the math, basically. You're using the percentages, doing some calculations. The conclusions, the part that I have just done here, in order to get 100% for that, you're going to actually explain what those calculations mean. Joe Bob cannot afford to buy a car because blank. You're going to explain what your math meant. Joe can afford to buy a car because blank. So again, the green section here, you're doing the math, and then for the second portion to get all your points, you're explaining what that math means. Hopefully this has helped to clarify any questions that you might have, but as always, if you've got any other questions, you can feel free to reach out.